Hi, students. How are you doing? Welcome to Seminary. Thank you so much for the support. Hope you all are doing great. So I came across this video where this young man was talking about how, he said that healthcare is tied to employment instead of housing. And because ownership and self-sufficient is freedom under capitalism, not glorifying wage salary. And you all know how true this is because I don't know how he sat down to think of this, but you and I know this is true because they feel like that your employment is tied to housing and yeah, instead of owning, right? And you just keep they glorify the wage slavery more because you have to work. And this really make a lot of sense because sometimes I feel like we really do need to own a whole lot. When I say own a whole lot, be in charge of some certain things. Because we black people have worked so hard for them that they feel like, that's why they hold black people so much with that salary. Because they feel like without that salary, you cannot operate, you cannot move, you cannot stand. So you have to continue slavery, slaving for them and continue to get the money instead of owning something. And also sometimes it's also a very good time for us to think outside the box. Why am I saying thinking outside the box? Sometimes you really have to think of owning instead of being the 9 to 5 that is tied to slavery. And this is also so a very, very great this thing for me too, because sometimes when you work so hard, you have to think of, I am going to stop working at so time. When you stop working, what are you falling back to? Let's get into this video.
The reason why healthcare is tied to your employment instead of your housing is because we want people to feel like they're entitled to work, but nobody is entitled to own. That's how you can slide in a slave-esque employment or labor force society without having to actually accommodate the fact that people need a place to go back to and to regulate and rejuvenate, especially if you're extending them like way beyond human limitations on a daily fucking basis. And you're not even allowing them to live seasonally or living on the moon calendar, which human beings are naturally supposed to adhere to beyond the capitalist system where time was colonized for the sake of being able to make this illusion of infinite profits that serve like 10 families in human history. And then we end up self-destructing because that's not how fucking Earth is supposed to work. But we can never figure it out. I don't know if this is a real phrase from the World Economic Forum, but I've heard it a handful of times in these little panels I've been listening to. And that phrase, you will rent or you will own nothing and be happy, that's almost like a war cry for we're making slaves today. We're making slaves today. Because let me tell you this, slavery is not about the abuse that you take. Slavery is about your ability or inability to be self-sufficient, and beyond that, to save yourself. Self-sufficiency is only step one. The second you realize that you are self-sufficient and the master is really feeding off of you, because the master is more enslaved to the system than you are. You just have to realize that the system is trapping you and probably deep in your mind psychologically stopping you from being able to make the decision that would free you. Because if the slaves run away, bro, the master can't handle the plantation on himself or by himself. The master's wealth is in the well-being of the plantation, but the master has to convince the slave that the slave's salvation comes on the other side of the work that they're doing on the plantation to make sure that the slave gives every drop that they have into the plantation, and the master can continue to represent this plantation as if this is their property and they are the master of all. But I'm going to make a podcast on this in the coming weeks. And the title of it, the working title of it right now is Field Nigga, House Nigga, Harriet Tubman on These Fuck Niggas. And it's understanding that now that the world has been globalized enough to awareness at a point where we don't necessarily, there is nowhere to run. Like, we're on Earth. There is nowhere to run. And now that we know that, there is no underground railroad to run away to. We have to start recognizing how to play this game that we have been dominated so much by. And the only way to actually create leverage in this game of like world experience is ownership. Like, I want this, the one thing you take out of this video is especially with the boomer wealth transfer that's happening in America from 2025 to 2050, especially with the crazy transfer of political power that's been happening in America and it's being used to implement Project 2025. I'm telling you, everything is to remove marginalized people from access to executive society and to stop us from owning anything. Because if we don't own anything, we are owned by who we are renting from, because they own our salvation. A lot of you guys don't like looking at that word salvation as anything other than like a religious context, but you have to recognize this. Salvation is the hand that feeds you. If you are not the hand that feeds you, somebody else feeds you. If that person stops feeding you, you're going to have to be the person that feeds you, or you're going to starve. And if you starve, you will. So, to all my young people, because I'm a young person myself, and I'm starting to see this game, and instead of just trying to like fight it politically or like as like an activist, I want to fight it as like an entrepreneur. We got to own stuff. Even if all you do is own your little side business that only sells like one product a day, yeah, we're going to have to start owning stuff. We're going to have to start getting leases, getting notes, getting property in our name. We're going to have to start truly developing credit. We're going to have to start truly like integrating ourselves into the real world, especially as everybody is getting shelled into total digital reality as a means of conveniencing them out of being a human. Because I'm telling you right now, if you take that path, the only thing next for you is laying in like some kind of matrix chamber and having the energy sucked out of you while they show you your favorite corn video and feed you like Baja Blast through a nasal tube. But forgive me for just not wanting to be mainstream like black nigga. I've realized that my ancestors have called me to be doing some other shit, like totally other shit. So I may sound a little corny when I'm promoting like, hey, we should get to school. Hey, we should get housing. Hey, we should get in communities and try to make this stuff together and do art together and do more things than just like party and smoke and fuck. But it's because I've seen the world we're walking into. And I know not only the marketing that comes from the top to the bottom to sell poor people to buy shit, but I know how much wealthy people hate us. One, because they don't live a human life like us and they are under the same circumstances that we are. But also because the human emotions that we feel and that we're under the mercy of, they will never feel authentically. And the only way they get to feel them is literally by forcing it out of us by watching us suffer. So I don't know if it's like a fetish that like powerful or like wealthy people have watching vulnerable, desperate people suffer, or if it's this desire to be human like us when they're so protected by wealth and status in systems that mean absolutely nothing. But if you're a poor person, I need you to start like, and I know this is going to sound like a crazy task, especially if you have a family and you have a relationship and you have things you're doing. Ownership over the next 5 years and stacking the fuck up out of some wealth, please. If not for yourself and your people, for me, please. I'm not saying to give me your money. I'm saying to understand what it's like to be an owner in a society that is quickly moving to only serve owners of capital and corporations. Owners of capital. What's the best way to centralize that? You just remove everybody who's actually an owner and just popularize renting everything, subscribing to everything, and never actually saying, hey, that is in my name and I don't have to pay nothing every month on it because that's mine. And even better, I make money off that every month because I give it to somebody else to rent from me. Look at that. And I want to make sure I'm adding on to the first point that I made in this video about healthcare not being tied to housing. There's something interesting about creating a society where people can be employed and still not make enough money to have housing. Because You're creating a world of people who are just getting by every single day rather than people being able to have a place to stay and actually create a solid routine, actually be able to be in the know of their local community, and actually be able to have some kind of privacy for like the aspects of their life that shouldn't be publicized, like their hygiene and their need to clean themselves and take care of themselves and their need to rest and be safe in that rest, not afraid that somebody's going to come steal from them or like beat them to while they're sleeping. But there's a whole lot of conversations we could have. Final take of this video is going to be, it is more expensive to be homeless in America than it is to actually be housed. The problem is so many of you housed people are already in so much debt and have so many other responsibilities that you should have never taken on. You don't understand how inexpensive it could be to be a baseline, bare minimum, responsible adult if you were supported by a society that actually gave a fuck about average people every day. We had a world that allowed us to live here because we were able to breathe oxygen and care for it. And then we created a society that said that people can own land, meaning that you can't live on the land that they own. And then we created housing for people to live in, and then also places for them to live outside of. And then we decided we're going to create a world where people can live outside of housing that is on top of an earth that was already giving them housing and living support. But we're going to stop them from accessing that because somebody owns that. But then on top of that, we're going to stop them from accessing housing because they can't afford that, or they don't deserve that. And then we're going to make them sleep on a street that is on top of the earth that used to be able to care for them, and they're probably going to burn there and fry like an egg. And this is the society we've created. Remember that. Remember
This
that
is
when
all
people
I
start to
got
do
from
this shit.
those video, and a very big shout out to this young man. That one thing I am loving so far is the fact that young Black people are kind of waking up and understanding how politics and how the system has really been held Black people down, and what way, how are we supposed to break free from all this and the rest of it. And now I like, when I saw this video, I was like, wait, he said healthcare is tied to employment instead of housing, because ownership and self-sufficiency is freedom under capitalism, not glorified wage slavery. And you all know it. Like, if you all remember that I have been screaming so hard when it comes to finding something really good, something tangible that somebody can fall back to in case peradventure something happens. And like, your job is no longer there. What can you fall back to as a person? Like, you can say, okay, this is mine, and I am just going to start building this from scratch just to help me and all that. And thank goodness, all these what is it called? Social medias are also helping. But then let's get into it. You all already know how hard they have worked to hold my people down, how hard they have worked to make sure that my people are not owners, right? They want they work so hard to make sure that you are not owning anything, that they are the one owning, and you have to be the one working for them. And then in the end, they might end up pushing you away or end up paying you peanut just because it's just been the pattern. The pattern has always been there. Now, this is just your time to break through it. Well, something I also know is that not everybody will be entrepreneur, right? And not everybody will work 9 to 5. But in as much as we are working that job, what are you also doing to make sure that if tomorrow you stop working, that you won't have to be homeless? Or like you said, being homeless is even cheaper than being housed. That is to tell you how deeply the system, how deeply damaged the system is. Because tell me how you are not, like, you are not paying a lot. You are kind of safe being probably living in your car, if you have a car, right, than living in a house. That is how broken the system is. And the best we all can do, because you all already know how the system has been. The system has been manipulated not to favor people that look like me. But when we know that, you and I know that, right? So what are you doing? How hard are you working? to make sure that even if something happens to your job today, how long will it take you to still be fine, fit fine, take care of your family or take care of yourself before you bounce back? Are you planning to own something, even if it is not a house? Because I know some people can say like it's hard owning a house and all that, but what are you planning to own? How hard are you working to break free? Because the major thing is to break free. It is only when you break free that you will know how bad the system is. But the truth is that majority of people know how bad the system is already, and they are trying as much as they can to do what they can do to save themselves. I am gonna draw the card in here. See you all in my next video. Bye for now.